Want to welcome you into the Wednesday edition of the Hog Talk podcast, powered by the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, Robinson, PLLC, with offices in Springdale, Fort Smith, and Ozark. They're the oldest full-service law firm in the River Valley, and also Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports contests, events with first-to-market odds and lines. Bet Online continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information from live in-game betting, props, and futures. So head on over to Bet Online and use our promo code BLEAV50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. With that, we go to the Camelot Exteriors hotline and bring in our brother for 51 weeks out of the year. This week, we got to put things aside. Blake Ruffino, AYS Sports, good, been on with us multiple times, and you had a really good week. How's it been with the fan base, and just how's this week been leading up to this Arkansas game?
It's been a great week. Outside, during the bye week, we had our second child. We had our little girl, and then, you come home – thank you. Then you come home and you beat Alabama. So, I mean, it's been a very inspiring week. But, Porter, I'll tell you this. You can't look past Arkansas. Now, I mean, there's a lot of things I think are trending in the right direction for LSU, even going into this week, in reference to, a lot of players on the team are talking about going back and they want to get the golden boot. Like, this is something that they really want. So we've seen teams in the past at LSU that really kind of look over Arkansas in a lot of ways. So if that's the truth and they're not looking past Arkansas, then it's going to be, I think, a different game than some. And then obviously, just picking up from, I was on the SEC teleconference phone call this morning when Sam Pittman came on, and just hearing him talk about KJ Jefferson's health. I mean, look, if you want to talk about a trap game or you want to talk about like whatever you want to talk about, it really is going to be an interesting game to tune into, because the truth, Porter, and all this from an LSU perspective is look, you're one game away from clinching the SEC West. If Ole Miss loses to Alabama and you beat Arkansas, you're going to Atlanta. So that's a far cry from what people had LSU in the beginning of the season. So, I mean, you just got to go out there now. You have so much more to play for. And I guess the last thing for me that I'll say here is, look, I'm not saying they're going to beat Georgia, so don't take it as this. But if LSU can run the table, and look, they're not going to keep out the SEC champion. Like, I don't care what they did against Florida State. I don't care what they did against Tennessee. They're going to put in the SEC champion. So, needless to say, Porter, I think LSU just has something to play for now than maybe they've had in past seasons, so which I kind of think makes them a little bit dangerous.
Well, and let's be honest. This would be the first time LSU's had a 2-loss and had a national championship by their name. So, and how crazy is it that Arkansas had something to do with that? I mean, it's crazy how when you're talking and people it's weird how many media that I've seen that seem to forget that LSU won a national championship with 2 losses, and it was a loss against Arkansas. But I was looking at some media things. They're like, well, a 2-loss team will never do this and that. And I'm like, it's already been done. LSU has already done it. But
yeah, and what honestly, Porter, in a harder way to do it in reference to in the BCS when there's only 2 teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so now you have 4 teams that can get in the playoff. But look, that's a far way away. You still got Arkansas. You still got UAB. You still had to go and play Texas A&M. So they got to take care of business on Saturday. And look, it's going to be duck blind cold is what I call it. Duck
Yes.
blind cold in Arkansas this week. So you just got to go out there and you got to take care of business. And look, for all intents and purposes, LSU, since the Tennessee loss, has really turned it on. And look, LSU might not have the depth that some teams do, but they definitely are having the heart. And that's something you got to love.
And that's one thing when you talk about LSU and where basketball gets the benefit is it's all about playing at the right place at the right time. And I was going to ask you, I've been thinking about this, you think about the playoff expansion.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Kyle and Cabo about this is the perfect reason why I think that there needs to be an expansion of the playoff because of teams. I'm not saying LSU is going to get left out. If they go win the SEC championship, they're going to be in. But by that chance, say they play, you can't say that in a 12-team playoff, they don't deserve to be in. So, I mean, it's almost like a case of we're seeing why. Look at LSU's case. You're dealing with a new coach, transfer portal, 61 guys on scholarship, and you're still playing the type of ball that you are.
You know what's actually, they got 3 guys back, so now they're at 64, which is a miracle. I mean, even Porter and some just very quickly, LSU could still get 21 scholarship players. They could damn near field an offense and defense on the lack of depth that they're missing on the scholarship limit. That's insane. But to your point, the only thing about playoff expansion for me is, does that game really matter against Alabama? Meaning, like in next couple of seasons, like,
yeah,
because Alabama's still going to get in at this point, right? Like if they win out, they're still in the playoff. And so the only thing that I worry about is, like, does that take away from, the regular season? But look, we'll see. But see, I say that, and then it benefits LSU though. Like, so in reference to me maybe not being a very big fan of playoff expansion, I say that with it. If it was here this year, LSU would probably make the playoff, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, but it's going to be interesting. I will say this though, to your point, in the playoff expansion realm, I think this LSU team beats TCU. I think that they beat Oregon, and I really think it's interesting if they had
Michigan. Until a Big Ten team wins a national championship and gets over that hump, you're not going to tell me that, a Big Ten team's going to win it. And that's where I guess in a way, being a Clemson fan, I get so frustrated, like on the Ohio State side of it, because it's like they're like in Oklahoma. They act like they've won 4 national championships in the college football playoff era, and they haven't. But it's like, and then they lose. Excuse me, they lose a game, and it's like, well, it was windy. Well, Notre Dame can't crap out of Clemson in the same kind of wind, and it's like, oh, well, they don't belong. It's just there's always those narratives and stuff. But I was thinking, and I wanted to ask you about the playoff expansion. How many coaches would still have their jobs if there was a playoff expansion? There's not that pressure of, well, we're not making it, and then the opt-outs. There's not this pressure of, well, if we lose 1-2 games a year, there goes our chances of even being considered in the top 4.
Yeah, I would, maybe Paul Chryst at Wisconsin still has his job. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. To your point, maybe a lot of people would still have their job. Maybe Lincoln Riley doesn't want to leave Oklahoma, because, or maybe he says, you know what? Well, I could still have 2 losses in the SEC, and I could still go to the playoff. I don't know that, but it's definitely interesting, But look, here's the thing, and in this playoff expansion, like Tulane would be in the playoff, and listen, I'm not a hater of Tulane, but they would probably go up against a number 1 or number 4 team in the country. Tennessee would absolutely boat race Tulane. Georgia, they would have to call the police. They would have to call the FBI and the CIA if Tulane played Georgia. So there are parts of me that says, okay, you want it, but please, dear God, put Tulane against Georgia. I double dog dare you. And so, like, and even to you talk about Clemson, like that loss against Notre Dame really doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot, does it? Because if you win out, you're still in the playoffs. So, I mean, I get it, but look, anything can happen. Look, I know you guys probably talk baseball because Arkansas is just really good at baseball. So, look, we know this for a fact. Ole Miss was the last team in the field, and they won it all. So you never really know what's going to happen. Football is a lot different. I know that, but you just never know. So, look, maybe Porter, by the grace of Jesus above, the number 12 team wins it all. And we're like, what the hell were we all doing? And the playoff expansion is great. But like you said about the Big Ten, until then, and until Wisconsin wins a national title, I'm not a believer. But again, that's just me. I don't like the college football change. But look, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. And moving on to the LSU Arkansas game, you said, about the boot. And do you think the fact that Arkansas did win it last year and they kind of the players you're talking about, they want the boot? Do you think the fact that they got it taken away, they're like, of course it's easy to overlook Arkansas or when you keep on winning and winning. Well, now that thing got taken away from them. So, and I'll tell you honestly, from an Arkansas side of things, we are actually, it's kind of not a relief, but not what I'm trying to say is like, it's interesting to see that the LSU players see it just as much as, because it's always on our side of it seems like a one-sided deal. Like, well, LSU don't care about it as much because they're not true rivals, when Arkansas is just searching for somebody to be their rival, like their best friend. Is it Missouri? Is it A&M? Is it LSU? So
right.
Hearing you say that's very interesting, the fact that they do see that boot as a legit prize.
Well, I think they do right now because, again, Brian Kelly's put a very big emphasis on, like it, love it, or hate it, he's put a big emphasis on, so, for example, when LSU used to play Ole Miss, either under Ed Orgeron, who was actually, we all know this, a head coach at Ole Miss, or Les Miles or whoever, nobody made the emphasis of LSU versus Ole Miss being the Magnolia Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, Brian Kelly made it a big deal, and he made it a big deal to the players, which then they went out and won and beat the number 7 team in the country. Obviously, we know what started trending from there. Now he's making a big deal out of the Golden Boot. Look, and to Brian Kelly's credit, he wants all of it. Like, he wants championships. He wants trophies. And Porter, what's so wild about this is, as much criticism as that man's taken, right?
Yes.
He wants it all. And I get that he lost to Florida State. I get that he lost to Tennessee. But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, he's 21 scholarship players away from having a full roster.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, because here's what I believe, what happened on Saturday that nobody can convince me, even if they lost to Arkansas or they lose to Arkansas this week, is when they went for 2 and they got it. I don't think, Porter, that there's another damn thing that Brian Kelly can say that the team won't do now, right? Like, now it's the buy-in's really there.
Yeah.
So LSU has this little thing called LSU Gold. Every assignment, every class, not one player missed class last week. Okay, not one player missed like a questionnaire thing that they do. So all of that I'm saying is he's putting an emphasis on things, which now, because he's leading them to victory over Alabama, which they shouldn't have done. Okay, let's call it what it is. They had no business beating them. So some people would believe that because they were 13.5-point dog. Now he can say whatever he wants. And I think that now that the players and the coaches are doing it, has now trickled a little into the fan base of like, yeah, you know what? Let's go get – can I curse on here?
Yes.
No? Okay.
Yes, you can. Ain't going on.
Let's go get that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Right. And so really and truthfully, they blurted out the words when he said it.
Yeah.
Like, go get it. So I really think that that's a mentality that they're going into this game. And let me tell you something too. The last thing on this part, LSU's defense has been like a little bit of a blood and blood and shark's water, or shark infested waters. Let them find out KJ Jefferson's not playing. Let them find out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would say, oh, well, they would take a step back. No, they got a lot of things that they say that they want to prove. Let's say, and even if KJ does play, I think that, Porter, they shouldn't have lost. LSU comes from a perspective that, hey, man, we lost by a field goal last year, and Ed Orgeron was just kind of, hey, guys, let's go out here and, whatever. So I think they're a little pissed off, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, this is the thing. I kind of ripped the team last week on Sunday's show about just, you had this momentum going, and we know how ebbs and flows of a football season goes. You're talking about since that Tennessee loss and how they've kept the momentum going. Well, Arkansas had the same momentum with the BYU game, Auburn game, bye week. You didn't have any excuses, and then they come and just lay an egg. And it was like, I know Liberty was ranked, and I know everybody overlooked them, but it's still like a gut punch of like, this was the first game that Sam Pittman lost a game that he should have won. Like, and if you look at his young career at Arkansas. But back to the point of what you're talking about, Brian Kelly, it seemed like as soon as he dropped the accent of like, okay, let's get to business. And then you see the tweets of, this is a 4-win season. They ain't going to win no more than 7. That you see all that stuff that they go through, and for them, and it's almost what I thought about it is, how many people in the media, or how many people put LSU at 10 for the sake of boosting Alabama's resume, and it backfired on him. That's the way I seen that. You put LSU at 10. I'm not saying they belong there or not, but it's just the fact that you always see them do that to these SEC teams. They put 1 or 2 of these teams in the top 10 to boost to Georgia or Alabama's resume, so they won't have an excuse come playoff time.
Well, what's funny and what's crazy is what happens when Bama loses. And I still think LSU got a little bit hosed. Again, like I said, I get TCU's undefeated. I get that they're number 4 in the country. Porter, are you telling me that on a neutral field that TCU takes down LSU?
No.
Okay, so
the way the 2 teams are playing right now,
no, and so that's a lot of my point here is that look, and we do the Believe, and I know you guys are part of Believe too.
Yes.
I post my rankings every single week. I post them on Sundays. The week of the Alabama game, I had LSU at number 10. Let me tell you why I had them at number 10. Because over that last 2-week span, they were number 1 in rushing yards. They were number 1 in passing completions. They were number 1 on third down offense. They were number 1 on third down defense. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, you did against Florida and you did against Ole Miss. Then I went back and watched the Auburn game. And a lot of people said, well, LSU struggled. And I agree, they struggled. But here's the difference. They had 9 drops in that football game. 9. My thing would have been, if they would have completed those passes, LSU was about to blow the doors off of Auburn.
Yeah.
So then you see the rise of how they were getting better. And I said it on my show, and Porter, for the love of our fans, got absolutely picked apart. But when I watch film, I chart things like this in this little black book. Okay. Yeah. And so I just feel as if that LSU was going to be there at number 10. And I said on the hot take of the week, LSU was going to win this game 31-28, and I thought it could go to overtime. The reason being just because they dominate in the running game. They give a damn. And when you have a team that has that much talent, that gives a damn, that is really well coached, it mixes well together and things start forming. We've seen this multiple times at LSU to know that, hey, man, it's just a different breed when you start getting them athletes ready to roll. And so, look, and they're only going to get better, which is scary. And, Porter, we've been here 20 minutes almost, and we hadn't talked about the number one thing that they, number one guy on this, really, and that's been Jane Daniels. So, look, I
want to say something. You pointed him out a long time ago.
Yeah.
I remember a long time ago before anybody was on him, and I want to give you your props for that I remember you saying we need to watch out for him, and you got real. I think it was on a live, one of your little spaces that I joined in on, and you were talking about him, and they were ripping you apart for it. And I was coming in, we were talking. So, yeah, that was a long time. That was the beginning of the season you said that.
Yeah, because here's one thing you can't teach, Porter, is speed. You can't teach elite speed. And everybody said, well, he can't throw the football. He's a horrible throw of the football. Well, he's completing 72% of his passes the last 3 weeks. I want to say something really rude, but I'm not going to. Spare me what you think that you know. 72% completion percentage, almost 800 yards. I think it's 779 yards. He has 7 touchdowns the last 3 weeks, 7 rushing touchdowns. Porter, he's averaging close to 5 touchdowns a game and over 300 or right at 350 yards of total offense. My point being is that he's been stellar, and really and truthfully, he does it so quietly, right? Like, meaning he doesn't he does a lot of things flashy, but at the end of the night, at the end of the box score, when you look at it, like, damn, bro, that dude ran for 100 yards. Like, so for example, last week against Alabama, he didn't run for 95 net rushing yards. He ran for 127. My point of that is he got sacked 6 times.
And so I wish they would take that away from the rush. If you're dropping back for a pass, I think that should go against your passing yards because you are in the attempt of a pass. Now, if you start scrambling and running, and we got the technology now, we can differentiate the two. If you're running from a scramble and you get sacked, okay, that goes against your rushing yards. But when you're dropping in the pocket, so I get your point on that.
Even if you're scrambling, right? Like I see, and I'm going to add on to that. I think that if it is a design pass play and you're running for your life and someone tracks you down, go against the total team's passing yards, right? Like, I mean, they do that in the NFL. Why shouldn't they do that here?
Exactly.
My point being is that he's just been so special, what he's been able to do the last couple of weeks. And so if they do look, I don't know. I've never seen the young man play in cold weather. This team hadn't been playing in cold weather. So look, again, we'll see. But the bottom line is if they can win this upcoming Saturday, I think they run the rest of the table. They go 10-2 for the regular season, and then they go to Hotlanta. So I will tell you this, Porter, if they go 10-2, if Brian Kelly has another 10-win season, after everything that's going on with him in the offseason and what everybody said about him, I don't want to hear another word. Like, I don't want to hear nothing.
I cannot remember who it was. Some sports guy was talking about in Brian Kelly's best year at Notre Dame, he got boat raced in the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
In one of his least talented years at LSU, his first year, he beats Alabama. I can't remember the guy's name. If it did, I would credit him. It was on TikTok, the bald-headed guy. I cannot remember his name. But that is what really sparked – it really took me back on, like, holy crap.
Well, I mean, look, you guys know this. I mean, even to the extent of, let me ask you this question: last 20 years, has Notre Dame ever had Darren McFadden?
No, they ain't had anybody since Jerome Bettis and Rocket Ismail.
Right. So, I mean, they've had some decent running backs. They've had some decent wide receivers.
Yeah.
They haven't had Keyshawn Boutte. They haven't had Odell Beckham. They haven't had Jarvis Landry. They haven't had Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. The thing that with Brian Kelly too is if he can get the offensive line that he had at Notre Dame with the skill positions that LSU can get on the outside, watch out.
Yeah,
like legitimately watch out. So, in reference to this game, look, there are probably 3 big things that I look for, Porter. So I'm going to tell it on your show, but these are pretty much like our keys to victory for LSU. As an example, you got to find a way to contain Drew Sanders. Okay, I think he's the best linebacker playing right now. Now, is he maybe the overall best linebacker in the country or SEC?
Yeah.
Give or take. But he leads the SEC, I think, in sacks, and he's really close to leading the SEC in tackles. That's highly impressive. With a young offensive line, you have to be able to contain him. They've done a lot. They've done really well containing guys like Will Anderson. Number 2 is if it's going to be a cold weather environment, let the big maulers up front eat. Yep. Let them run the football, right? Like, let them run, let them get after some dudes. And then number 3, Porter, I think that this game in a very bad weather situation, whatever team wins the turnover battle is going to win the game. And I can't believe I'm saying that. And I really don't care that Arkansas lost to Liberty last week. Like that I really don't care. Because styles make fights and weathers make fights.
That's the thing I was going to bring up is I don't remember a game where weather has made a game that I thought in normal circumstances would be, and I'm just going to be honest, a 21-point game. It's an even playing field because of the youth you have at quarterback. Your general is young. You know, he's never been in this environment. So, and not only is it going to be cold, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's hard enough to get my kids up at 7 o'clock and get ready for school, much less could you imagine getting up and then getting up to play for an SEC football game at, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning because all the theatrics and getting to the game so early.
Yeah, the weather doesn't bother me as much as the time does, if I'm being honest. Yeah. LSU just doesn't bode well in 11 a.m. kickoffs. Look, it's a culture down here, man. People ask me all the time, why do you miss duck hunting so much? And I'm like, well, I can't get up that early. I mean, it's just kind of like a culture thing down here.
And let's go stand in some water.
Yeah, well, I don't mind standing in no water. Look, I would rather stand in water if I could just get up, So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it comes down to who wants it more. Like this game gets goofy a lot.
Yeah, we've seen some crazy things. And I'll tell you what, we're talking about the weather. I mean, it's so crazy up here. I mean, this is no lie. This is not even to be funny. The daggum Canadian geese they're flying in circles. They don't know whether to go north or south. They don't. I mean, that's just how crazy this weather is in Northwest Arkansas where we're at. It could be. I mean, I remember last year or this past spring, it came a tornado, and then the next day it was snowing. I mean, that's just how insane the weather is here. So, I mean, you come in and it's going to be, 11 o'clock, and I don't even know what the lows are going to be at the 30s or 40s or whatever. But, I mean, and another thing we're not even talking about when it comes to weather is getting hit. I mean, that first time that guy gets hit and he pops out, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and look, it's tough when it stings. That one, the one in the cold stings, man. It stings. So, I'd never liked playing in the cold weather, but again, it comes down to, and look, if KJ's out, it could get ugly. So,
and that's a thing I don't touch on that stuff. We have had a huge problem with people finding information out that didn't come from media and releasing it. And I'm telling you, nothing frustrates me more than that. Like that's injury, that's health, that's someone, and especially when you don't know for sure if that's legit. Like that, we had reports 20 minutes before kickoff that KJ Jefferson wasn't going to play, and then he ended up playing. But we'll wrap it up with this because I know
I'll end it here, Porter. To that thought, I'm not trying to rip on Sam Pittman. Like I'm really not. Don't, and I hope your listeners and your fans don't take this the wrong way. He's got to do better at covering that up too. When he was asked about it today on the SEC teleconference, like he didn't. He kind of did a really bad job of saying, no, he's fine. He's like, no, he didn't practice, and I don't know if he's going to be there. We'll have to see. So,
well, to clarify that, we'll end it here. He got ripped because last week Malik Hornsby was taking all the snaps, and then it was a game time decision. They put KJ. So that's where all this gets you in trouble. But man, hey, Blake, again, listen, new father, I understand you got things to take care of, and
I don't know how y'all don't hear him screaming, brother. I have no idea.
That Believe Studios for you, man. It's quiet.
Yeah, I know. Well, he's banging on the door. I'm like, dear Lord,
you're good. But hey, man, I appreciate you. Good luck to you, brother, in the rest of the season.
We'll get you on this week too. We'll do something.
Yeah,
get you guys. We'll talk a little bit more about it.
That sounds good, man. Hey, that was Blake Ruffino of AYS Sports, newly father. So you know how things go on live shows. When duty calls of being a father and you got the kids screaming, you got to go. But I really want to appreciate him coming on. Yeah, man, this game is just it's a trap for me. Just if to be honest, the demeanor that Coach Pittman had in the press conference and just after the game, there was no pep. There was no like light at the end of the tunnel. There was no, well, yeah, we've been doing okay at practice, but it's almost like Trey Biddy asked him, where's that fire? Hey, how's everything? And it was like it started off okay, then it kind of dropped. It's like So it's going to be very interesting to see, and what Blake was saying on his end of it with being 11 o'clock. That's a team coming off of a great win, a program defining, and I know it's LSU, but it's still a program defining win for Brian Kelly. Coming down to LSU, first win. They're on the cusp of, they were out of the conversation, and now they're on the cusp of going to the SEC championship game. They beat Georgia. They're going to be in. Two-loss team is going to be in the college football playoff. That's just, and that is, and when you're playing the way LSU is and they're beating the teams that they are, you cannot not leave them out of the college football playoff. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, see how Arkansas, and I even posed the question on our Facebook. Is this the most important game of the year or most important game of Sam Pittman's career? And when I say you don't have to win the game, it wasn't, and that's where texting, posting come across where you don't get the what you mean by it. It comes off differently, is the fact that I'm not saying they can't win it. I mean, anything can happen when it's Arkansas and LSU, but I'm not saying Arkansas has to win this game on Saturday to get things back on track. If it's a close game or they lose by 7 to 10 points and they come out and they compete and then just things don't go their way, that is okay. It's going to be tough if LSU comes in here full head of steam, Arkansas is not playing up, and especially and the thing is if KJ's doesn't play and they put Malik in and the team just doesn't have that fight, that's where the questions are going to start getting tougher. Because it's the thing that if you look at it, Malik's had first team snaps last week. Things didn't work out. They put KJ in. And of course they're going to say, KJ's the guy, he should have started. Hey, that's the coach's decision. That's their decision. I'm not anything part of the team. I will never criticize the coaching on when it comes to the decision. Now, if it don't pan out, hey, you made the decision that it didn't pan out. So you got to answer for why it didn't pan out. But I just think that in this type of a game, they don't come out. They come out flat. It's going to be hard to drop 3, or rush 3, drop 8 when you got a dual threat quarterback. So it's going to see their game plan on how they really attack LSU, and just hopefully, somehow Arkansas comes away with a win, because, it's almost like you speak what is on your mind, but you don't want that to be the way it is. I don't want this to be a struggle right now. You see what this team has done for the fan base and for the state, and bringing all the sports together and all the success rolling into basketball and baseball season, all the women's sports. We've seen what Sam Pittman's done with the 9-4 year and how it's embraced everybody to come together. So no, I don't want them to come out and be flat and everybody jumping ship, but that's what's going to start happening if they start playing bad. And then again, the questions aren't answered. And it's going to come to a point where he's going to have to answer some tough questions if the thing doesn't come out. But I'm hoping we have a positive outcome. I hope I'm coming on here Sunday and talking about an Arkansas win. But that will do it for this episode of the Wednesday edition of the Hog Talk podcast, presented by the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson PLLC, along with our guys at Bet Online. Again, thank you to Blake Ruffino for coming on with AYS Sports, and I'm sure we'll have him on again come basketball and baseball season, but we will catch you on Sunday.